Good morning and welcome to our interview series with our 2021 Hope Rising awardees. Today I'm joined by Kay Thomas. I'm excited to be here with you, Kay. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Connor.
I'm going to give a little introduction here to Kay. We're very excited to have them here. With a background in training and research, Kay has facilitated trainings on human trafficking, LGBTQ plus service provision, vicarious trauma, neurobiology, culturally responsive services, domestic violence, and trauma-informed care. As a clinical training manager for North County Lifelines Project Life, Kay has provided trauma reprocessing, victim advocacy, emergency response, and psychotherapy to survivors of trafficking. Kay provides training and development to staff, collaborative partners, community members, and service providers on human trafficking identification and services, trauma-informed care, cultural responsiveness, and best practice. Kay is also a founder and a co-chair of the California Human Trafficking Advocates Network for Collaboration and Empowerment, known as CHANCE. Kay is an unsung hero in the anti-human trafficking arena, showing dedication day in and day out to provide informed services to others. So thanks for being here with us, Kay. And I think we'll start off with a question, getting to know a little bit more about what motivated you to get involved in anti-trafficking work.
Yeah, well, I've been in I started in the sexual and relationship violence field about 10 years ago. I actually started working with women who had experienced domestic violence and sexual assault or sexual abuse who were in the process of getting ready to give birth and be mothers. And kind of as I started to explore that process more and really starting to see the impact of trauma on the body, how people parent, how people have relationships, I just kind of started to get more and more interested in different types of trauma and how to help folks. And I really got into the field of sexual and relationship violence in general because I really believed that I had a therapist who made a huge difference in my life as a survivor of both sexual and relationship violence. And I wanted to be able to give that back to other people. And eventually, kind of through a series of events and lots of trainings and exploring interests, I found myself working in the anti-trafficking movement with North County Lifeline. I felt so drawn to the position because they were specializing in working in services with the LGBTQIA plus community, which is a community that not only am I a member of, but it's close to my heart as well to ensure that services are available for those folks. And so it seemed like the perfect fit of all of my past experiences of clinical work and advocacy and support work to come to the anti-trafficking field. And I think what keeps me here every single day when I get up is the reminder that it's my responsibility as a citizen of the world to leave this world a better place than I found it for all the littles in my life, the nieces, the nephews, the younger siblings I have. And so I think that's what keeps me going every day now.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. How would you say you take care of yourself as you navigate this kind of work? What kind of self-care practices do you lean on to help keep you energized in this work?
Well, a lot of folks might think that I'm lying, but I'm actually an introvert. Many people don't know that about me because my position is really public and I spend a lot of time speaking. But I'm actually an introvert. So the ways I take care of myself, especially on the nights and weekends, is I just kind of hermit up in my house. I've got a lot of personal practices around reflection, around spirituality, like journaling, like artwork. I also have a 1-year-old puppy who keeps me on my toes, constantly playing, exercising. And then I also do a lot of things like I read a lot and I play video games. I do lots of things to escape, and spending time with my friends and family, in particular, spending time with the chosen family that I've created that supports me, are the things that really fill me up at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's fantastic to have that balance. Where you're able to take care of yourself so that you can bring your best self to your work. So thank you for sharing that. I'm curious, what are some of the challenges that you face in your daily work?
Ooh. I think first and foremost, kind of the biggest challenge is the reality that human trafficking isn't a new issue. It's not a new crime. It's really been around since the beginning of time that people have been exploiting each other. And so to me, I think that's a big challenge in the work, in finding new and innovative ways to address the issue perpetrators and criminals continue to get smarter about how to do recruitment, how to identify vulnerable populations, how to even disperse various products that they've made off of exploiting others. And so I think that's a really big challenge for me, of constantly just reminding myself that this isn't a race, it's a marathon, and it's not a sprint. And that, every day we're adding a little bit extra into that anti-trafficking movement. Every day we're chipping away at this large issue. And so I think that's definitely a challenge, just kind of holding the scope of the problem and the reality that there's no place in this world that hasn't been touched by trafficking. I think other challenges as well that I frequently see on a regular basis is acknowledging and honoring the lived experience of survivors. I think, unfortunately, there is a trend in the human trafficking and the anti-trafficking movement to tokenize survivors and to utilize their stories of trauma as a way to raise funds or to justify maybe what their program does. And while those pieces might be important to an extent, I think our community has fallen short in developing survivor leaders, in seeing them kind of beyond just their story and recognizing all of the incredible things that survivor leaders bring to the table. And so I think that's a constant challenge as well within the movement of trying to find ways to help survivor leaders find their voice and find their space and develop, without also at the same time assuming that somebody wants to do advocacy for the rest of their life, or that they want to be in the anti-trafficking movement for the rest of their life. So I think that's another big challenge that I see right now in the work, is finding ways to ensure that we continue to center always survivor voices, not just to hear about the bad things that may have happened to someone, but to understand holistically how to help people recover from trafficking experiences.
Completely. That's like getting the kind of whole story and recognizing the fullness of someone's own lived experience that they bring to the table. Yeah, that's really important. I'm curious, in conversations with survivors in your day-to-day workflow, what are some of the biggest gaps in services that you're seeing that maybe would be helpful for folks to have who are survivors of trafficking?
Yeah, I mean, I think housing is always going to continue to be a huge gap for sure. I think particularly though, specialized housing for men, boys, and LGBTQ victims. Housing services, whether they're shelter services or transitional housing programs, are normally very sex segregated. So male, female, right? And if you don't fall, generally speaking, they're often also only for women. So men often don't have a space in that. But in addition to that, because of that sex segregation, it creates a lot of opportunity for marginalization of the LGBTQIA communities, folks who identify as trans, folks who identify as non-binary, as an example. Where do they fit into this binary spectrum that we've created of gender? And so housing, especially housing for special populations, specialized populations like the LGBTQIA community, like men and boys in particular, I think are a really big area. But I think also in particular, there are a couple of things, but in particular, I think what I constantly find and I come back to is also beyond the employment components and beyond some of the therapy and the empowerment components in particular. I think a long-term continuum of care is not really available for survivors. Kind of once they've reached that place of stabilization, oftentimes we're like, okay, can you jump in and do advocacy work? Can you be a peer support? Can you mentor? Can you do this? But we forget that those people are still holding their own trauma, and healing is a journey, right? Not a destination. And so I think that continuum of care for survivors who have been removed from experiences of exploitation for longer, who are in spaces where maybe they've done, those harder programs, those more intense programs like Lifeline offers or Generate Hope as an example. But that next step above that, what does that look like to continue to manage your trauma? Because unfortunately, while those symptoms may decrease, they can come back. And while that trauma may not be at the forefront of your head, that doesn't mean it won't be tomorrow. And so I think that is a huge area of need of the anti-trafficking movement, to continue to develop that continuum, especially for survivors who are in spaces of leadership, because we often say, oh, you're in leadership, you don't need services anymore, you must be fine. And we know that's not the case. I am a mental health clinician and I still need my own mental health support. And that doesn't change the fact that I'm a good mental health clinician, but I'm also a human. And so I think, exploring that continuum is really vital right now as well in the work that we do.
Yeah, thank you for sharing completely. I know there's great interest in folks wanting to get involved, wanting to help here. I'm wondering, this question is kind of two parts. Number one, how can folks become educated about ways that they can help? And then what sort of tangible help do you think that folks can provide in this area?
Yeah. So I think folks who are wanting to find more education around the issue of human trafficking, there's a couple of things. I think first and foremost, of course, you can reach out to North County Lifeline. All of our trainings are completely free, and we offer technical assistance free of charge as well around human trafficking. So you can definitely reach out to us or reach out to other incredible organizations like CJR through PLNU, HT Radar, all of the incredible organizations that are here in San Diego to find out more. But I would also encourage looking at things like the NBC7 Stolen documentary and getting to watch things like that. There's a lot of really interactive content on the NBC7 website around human trafficking in San Diego County, going on the National Human Trafficking Hotline's website, the Polaris website, and reading more about the different populations that you're interested in. So I think, kind of starting there, finding ways, there's lots of free information available online. It's just a matter of taking a little bit of initiative in that space and really figuring out kind of where is the area you want to learn the most about. So I would start there, but also kind of thinking about what people can do. I think, of course, we're always, we're always fans of donations and money and things like that. Those are great. Those are the things that help make our program run. But I think from a more practical standpoint and recognizing that not everybody's in a space that they can do those kinds of things, the only way we're ever going to end trafficking is if we start having honest conversations about healthy relationships and healthy boundaries and how we treat each other. Trafficking is a symptom of an infection. Like a fever is it's a symptom of something larger, right? A fever is a symptom of an infection, and trafficking is the same way. And so if you think about it in that place, starting to think about it from more practical standpoints of how can I affect the community that's around me, my support system? How can I start having conversations about normalizing what trafficking looks like on a day-to-day basis? Here in San Diego County, one of the largest areas of labor exploitation is actually in construction. And the last time you drove past a construction site, did you think to yourself, hey, those people might be experiencing labor trafficking? Probably not, but that's because it wasn't in the forefront of your mind as something that we see happening every single day. And so I think exploring those components for yourself, how can you start to have conversations about a problem that has existed since the beginning of humankind? How can you start to have conversations and normalize the reality of talking about this with the kids in your life, with the loved ones in your life? And then in addition to that, starting to find ways to normalize that in the larger communities you're a part of, your churches, your youth groups, your social groups, community groups, classes that you go to. How can you start to normalize the conversation around trafficking and around treating each other with dignity and respect?
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. I'm wondering next, looking to the future, what kind of goals do you hold for yourself in the role that you have in your role in this world, really, to help combat anti-trafficking? Like if you're thinking several years ahead, what kind of goals do you hold?
That's a good question. I'm not sure what those goals are just yet entirely. I am in the process of getting licensed, so that's definitely a kind of more of a short-term goal now in the next couple of months. That'll be happening. So I am working on that component. I really enjoy, and I found this especially in the last year in my position as manager, that I really enjoy exploring the aspects of identity development with survivor leaders and finding ways to help survivor leaders and folks with lived experience, period, whether that's in the anti-trafficking movement or in other spaces as well, helping people learn to utilize their lived experience to meet the needs of the community while simultaneously building that professional skill and component at the same time. And so we actually have a survivor advisory board that we just started with Project Life a couple of months ago. And so that is kind of one of my current projects. But I say that to say that I would love to explore creating a better continuum of support for our survivor leaders, of development for our survivor leaders, of not just development, but also financial well-being for our survivors, kind of creating consistent standards and guidelines around how we work with folks. Other goals are just kind of things that I've been thinking about for a while, is the reality that when you are in the LGBTQIA communities, having a therapist who looks like you or understands you because they're a part of the community is a game changer. And I have been working with various queer folk out in the field for years. I'm also part of the community, but something that I would really like to do is to find a way to start specializing in providing therapy scholarships to queer identifying individuals within the San Diego community to address trauma and to work on trauma reprocessing with folks. That's a really big passion that I have. I don't know what that will look like in the future, if that will be maybe private practice or something like that, but that's definitely a goal I have in the future as well.
Awesome. It all revolves around kind of these mutual stories and just engaging in conversation with different folks and continuing to learn. So thank you for sharing for that. I have one final question for you. The theme of our event this year is Hope Rising. So I have to ask, what gives you hope?
You know, I think what gives me hope, and really the reason that I do this work every day, is all of the little ones in my life. I look at my niece and my nephew who are 4 and 1.5 and 21. I look at, the little baby cousins in my life, my godchildren, even my younger siblings. And when I look at them, I have hope that their life and their upbringing and their well-being is going to be radically different than mine when I was growing up. And that's what gives me hope, knowing that their future is going to be so much brighter than mine because I'm doing my best to leave this world a better place than I found it. And so I think every time I look at those littles in my life, that's what gives me hope to keep moving forward. And that's what gives me hope that all of the work that we're doing now, that baton will be picked up by this next generation.
Completely. Well, I think you're a great inspiration for all the little ones and for the next generation. So thank you so much for your time today. Always appreciate learning from you and all the wonderful insight that you have to share. Thank you for your work in anti-trafficking in this region and in the world. It's like so beautiful to see you as yourself in this space and really making a difference in our region and in our world. And congratulations on receiving the Hope Rising Award.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time today, Kay.